Hello, guys. There is an interesting problem on the internet, which is very, very fascinating. Is because the way algorithms work in social media, whether it's on X, whether it's on YouTube, on Instagram, it doesn't matter. It's the polarizing content that gets the most views. It's the same on TikTok. I actually I figured out the TikTok algorithm and figured out how to game it, and I had millions and millions and millions of views. Some people remember when I was talking about the Ukraine war, like 3-4 million views per video, and then also with some other stuff because I just figured out how it works. And the problem here is that the way it literally works is that the more controversial the content is, the more it gets pushed into the mainstream. And that is a massive problem, because then only fringe content, the extreme content, makes it onto your phone, onto your stream. And this has huge repercussions, not for someone who's a little bit older, but especially because we have so many young people on those platforms. So you have 10-year-olds being pushed extreme content, and then they don't even know where it's left or right, and they don't know where to set foot and feel good. And that's where, of course, then anxiety comes from, depression comes from, anger comes from, frustration comes from, violence comes from, and all of these things. And they wonder why they can't have normal relationships, because if you normalize gangbangs, if you normalize, like Aella does, or if you normalize, other types of things in your life, if you normalize, objectifying women, if you normalize, you could say anything that's not the norm, that is in the fringe category. If you normalize that, then young people are confused, and they will have a very bad life. And I think that's something that's very, very rarely discussed, because who's going to talk about it? Like, you have to first be conscious of what's happening. And most young men, for example, are not conscious in the way they're being manipulated by people like Tate, or women that are being manipulated by women by women like Aella. And I don't think it's even that many people are interested. It's just that it just gets pushed so much because it triggers you. And when it triggers you, you comment. And I catch myself also, because you don't know that you're actually feeding the beast. So when you're commenting, you're liking, you're disliking, you are giving it watch time, just because it's so strange. Like, it's looking like at a car accident, right? And then it's so strange that you're like, I'm just gonna watch more of it, because it's something that I've never heard or seen, and it seems very weird. And that's how it ends up being pushed to the 10-year-olds and to people who cannot deal with that kind of information. Because a normal adult can look at Tate, for example, and he understands that no amount of material possession is going to make you a happier person. A 10-year-old, a 15-year-old doesn't know that. An adult knows that he can't have a good relationship with a woman if he objectifies her. A 15-year-old doesn't know that. So then they wonder why they go about life very unhappy, attracting all these gold diggers. And I have to say something here also, to make it very clear. Tate is not attracting the tens of tens. He is going to events which attract gold diggers, or which attract superficial women, but he's not attracting the tens of tens. The tens of tens is a really solid woman. She might look like an 8 out of 10 or something, if she's really good looking, but she's in her heart she's literally in her heart energy. He's not attracting that, and most men do not want the woman that Tate has. He basically, you could say, is, you know, he is faking his happiness in one specific way. His whole life is kind of like a cope mechanism towards his childhood and his parents. And he's pretending basically to himself, not to others. He's pretending to himself that he's thoroughly enjoying the materialism and the superficiality. And of course, he's also a simple individual. So, you know, a simple individual will not have the same requirements as someone, you know, who's very reflective. That's also natural, of course. So all these topics are not seen and not discussed because people are so easily brainwashed. It's literally, they're being so easily brainwashed by these algorithms, and it's fascinating to watch. And everybody has a different soul plan, which means also that everybody has to figure out for themselves what makes sense for them in this life. It makes no sense to copy someone else, because you have your own soul plan. And this is also, a lot of 15-year-olds don't know this, because they think that, you know, Tate or someone like that is a replacement father in a way. And so they're like, my father wasn't this good and this, that, and this and that, and so Tate was my new father and I'm learning everything from him, and I'm copying basically his lifestyle, when in effect your soul plan is maybe something totally different. And you have to ask yourself, when you're copying Tate or some of these, you know, fringe candidates on the internet, you have to ask yourself, what is it that you really want? What is it that you're copying? Are you copying, you know, that you want to be richer than you and have more money than you'll ever need? For what purpose? You know? So you have to look at these things. And of course, you want to have some money, naturally. But you have to ask yourself, really, what are you copying? What is the real thing that you're copying? So you have to really understand your own motivations, your own soul plan, and understand what you're doing. And I think a lot of young people, they really don't know that. They just don't. They kind of know what they don't want, and that leads them then onto the internet, where they see these fringe candidates who seem to have it all. They seem to have, you know, everything that, you know, someone could desire. But I tell you something super interesting. I'm 45, and I could have girls just by signaling, you know, or pretending or giving them even money. So it's basically, if I were to say a Latina woman here in Spain, if I would say, hey, I pay you 300 and you spent with me the weekend or something, I don't know, whatever, you're basically doing the exact same thing as Tate. But the question is, you're just doing it different, but it's the same thing. It's just he's doing it with millions, you're doing it with a little bit less, but you're basically fishing in the same pond of women in terms of like energy. They might be different looking, they might behave different. And he, for example, he said something like, he literally believes the stuff that he says. He says like, well, if you want the 10 out of 10 Russian girl that is spending her time in the highest realms of, you know, echelon of whatever, I don't know, is, do you really want that 10 of 10 Russian? Is she really a 10 of 10? And while an older man that, you know, knows and can reflect, understands what he really wants, a 15-year-old doesn't know this. So they start to copy everything and all of this stuff, and then they start to treat women in their classroom, in their friend groups, worse and worse and worse. And this just creates a trauma cycle without, you know, it almost has the world, this whole algorithm thing, the whole social media has the world in kind of like a grip. And this grip is making people ever more extreme, and then they cannot find together in a normal relationship. It's fascinating to watch, actually. And the assumption, there's an interesting assumption by women. The assumption is that if you are not intensely independent and follow your extreme independence, then you will be subject to the whims of the men. And there is a partial truth to it, but it also discounts the men that genuinely want to be with a woman and care for the woman. And that's an interesting phenomenon. There's a lot of stuff that's happening in this world right now psychologically that nobody's discussing from a really self-reflected, spiritual, intellectual viewpoint. And you just have these kind of people like Jordan Peterson it's almost like a Jordan Peterson is almost just like superficial sound bites. It doesn't really go very deep sometimes, I have the feeling. And because he starts with shit like clean your room first. That's bullshit, of course, because in effect I would even go so far to say it's not the man's job to clean the room if you see it very traditionally. But I think this is something that needs to be looked at much, 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 much more, because it's something that's literally happening in real time and it's influencing a lot of people and nobody's talking about it. So the thing is, it will also get worse for one very important reason, because the internet is getting more and more decentralized, and by that, the ability to censor and diminish these kind of extreme voices will get less and less and less, to the point where, if someone like Tate or Aella or anyone else that is considered, an internet celebrity or becoming an internet celebrity, will not be censored anymore. That means you could post the hardcorest thing that you've ever done, and it becomes viral, and then a lot of 10, 15-year-olds see that, and then they think this is like the new norm or the thing to aspire to. It's very, very fascinating to watch. That society is entering, almost you could say, because there doesn't seem to be a counterbalance to this, society is entering into self-destruction mode. It literally seems like that. And, we have low birth rates, we have failing marriages, nobody trusts the other sex anymore. There's even more than just two sexes, two genders. It's really getting completely out of control. And then you have, in the politics, you have these also fringe candidates getting more and more into politics and determining what is supposed to be, the norm for people by enacting new laws and stuff like that. So it's getting really weird and a very fast pace. And some people that are super sane, they are removing themselves from social media, but that doesn't change the fact that out there everyone else is influenced by it. Just take the vaccines, which are not really vaccines, but take the the COVID shots. Think about how many people influence your decision to take them or not to take them, and then think about how it affects your body spending time with people who are vaxxed, and all of this stuff has a direct influence. So we're coming into the era where the social media influence is unescapable. It's not like you can hide yourself somewhere and just say, okay, this doesn't affect me, because people are literally carrying this into politics. They're carrying this into health, and suddenly, for example, I give you the example. imagine you're unvaxxed, okay, which I am. So if you're unvaxxed and now you go into the hospital and you need a blood transfusion, and you say, I don't want a vaxxed blood transfusion, but you're gonna get it, you know? So these kind of things are literally entering all parts of our life, and they're unescapable. It's very, very fascinating. And the interesting thing about, and I think Tate knows this very, very well, is that he plays the antagonist and the protagonist at the same time. So he's basically the hero and at the same time the villain. And that makes him very watchable. It's almost like schizophrenic. And a lot of people play this game now because that's the game a narcissist plays. It's basically the perfect game to keep people reeled in and interested, because sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're toxic, sometimes they're nice, sometimes they're bad, and it makes you entertained. It's just basically entertained. But what are you as a person, as a soul? It's basically like in Gladiator, in the movie, when he said, "Are you not entertained?" It's basically, now I gave you what you were looking for, but is it really what you want? Is it that what really satisfies you? And because he was on a mission, and the question is, what is your mission? Is it just to entertain yourself or others? And I think some people have these deeper questions about life, and otherwise you can be just a brutal hedonist. And but I think you will pretty soon see that it's pretty empty. So we're entering a very strange time, and I think that a decoupling, a spiritual awakening is prerequisitory, but there's also a necessity for decoupling and realizing that, I'm just going to say the way I see it, I think most people nowadays are very problematic. Whoever I talk to, they don't seem natural. They seem, either they gave up or they're just brainwashed. You don't find the kind of grounded middle person anymore. I have a feeling it's always kind of like sweeps to an extreme. And the more there's a funny consequence of that. The more I see and talk to other people that are weird, I mean weird in a bad way, the more I like myself. Because the more I realize how authentic and integer I've been to myself, how I stick to my principles and my values and all of these things, and the more I feel alienated from most people in a way. Although everything is one, I do feel alienated in the sense I don't want to spend time with them, and I feel more sane. I could say I feel more sane. So I would say society is now completely insane, and by being with myself on my own, I feel sane. The moment I'm with others, I start to feel insane again. I start to feel like I'm being pushed or manipulated or impregnated with ideas that are not even theirs. They're just agendas by someone. For example, if I were to meet with Tate and we sat at the same table, I feel like I would get impregnated by his bullshit ideas about life, instead of just being happy that I am in that moment. And that's what it feels like to me, that everybody has these, very strong opinions without knowing the truth, and they just want to impregnate others with those ideas all the time. And the vaccines were a perfect example. Like, you're supposed to take the vaccine, otherwise you're endangering everyone else. And it's not over, the thing with the vaccines, by the way. A friend of mine sent me an article, a collage of articles where, one after the other is dying. In January 2024, tons of people are dying because, heart stop and all of this stuff, which is probably because of the vaccines and boosters. So anyway, just wanted to get that out there, because I feel like it's not being discussed enough and not reflected enough. And the question is always, what is the alternative? If you don't follow a Tate, what is the alternative? Maybe the alternative is super simple. Just take life at the very moment that you're in, without creating fake stories, without creating, I need to go there, I need to create this, because it's always about the future. Like, Tate is about the future. We need to make more money. We need to have more of this, and the thing is, they sell it very well. They make it appear as if it really gives you happiness, which is funny. I think a trauma leads you to certain action. And that action wants to get rid of the trauma, but the trauma never goes away. So at a certain point, the trauma resurfaces because it hasn't been healed by the actions that you've done in order to cope with the trauma. So basically, I say, okay, you want a Lamborghini because you have a trauma, right? And you need 2 Lamborghinis because you have a trauma. If that's your trauma response, okay? Not everybody has the same trauma response. So let's say the trauma response is, I need to cope by having tens of tens because I got rejected in the past, and so forth. And then you do that a couple of times and you make it more and more extreme. I need more money, I need more cars, I need more girls. And then there comes a point where you reach the pinnacle and you realize, oh, the trauma is still there. So what do you do now? So then you might become religious, then you become fanatic religious, and you see, okay, that doesn't help either. That's the thing about trauma. Unless you look at the trauma itself and clarify that and spiritually awaken, use the trauma to spiritually awaken, you're not releasing yourself from the trauma. And the desire is such an interesting thing. Like, desire can be falsely created. So when you have a 15-year-old and you say, a 10 out of 10 Russian model in the highest echelons of society, you in your mind there is an image being created, and there is like the James Bond kind of image being created, that it's not only reachable for you, but it's actually desirable, when in fact you have to question whether that's truly for you desirable. And I don't think it is for most people. I don't think they realize what comes with that territory. There's a lot of other stuff that you don't want. For example, the constant nagging of a woman, that's a 10 out of 10. The hypergamy stress in terms of like constantly needing to spend money on her. A Tate doesn't bother that because he's just a simple being. So he doesn't care if the woman wants him or not. Or so I don't know. It's like, basically you have to ask yourself, do you want to objectify the entire world, or are you gonna, or do you want to be in your heart space, which is completely different. In your heart space, like the more you are in your heart space, the more you're going to realize that that the materialism just falls away. There's absolutely no materialism in heart space. And I think that's one of the major conflicts of our time, where the heart space is suppressed, the heart energy is suppressed, and we're constantly living out of this sexual hierarchy and libido dominance, energy, where we are like, as men, we're like, oh, I want this woman, I want this woman, I want this woman. Yeah. So it's always sexual. It's always sexual. And women are becoming more sexual as well. So we're overclocking the sacral chakra, you could say. But what about, the other experiences? And we try to make those two come together without success. That's the weirdest part about it. We're trying to make these two things come together without success. And one of the reasons is because women are not picking the right men anymore. They're not interested anymore in hard-based men. They're only interested in their sacral chakra. So you could almost say that women, in a way, have also over-sexualized themselves. And that then leads to, I remember I was with, I think this is a great example. I think this is actually a fantastic example. When I was 31, I was in love, or fell in love with another 31-year-old woman, and we were in a relationship, and I felt like at that time I was pretty naive in a lot of ways, but I was very much heart open to her, and her heart was closed, and her heart was closed for many reasons, but one of them, she had a bad relationship before me because the guy just sucked. Basically, he was muscular, but he from what I understand, I didn't know much about him because she was a long time already single, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, she was burned basically from that relationship. Because a woman that's 31, doesn't have children and a relationship, she usually, it's very, very interesting shit. Like when you talk about relationship and this stuff, is she was basically burned and she wasn't ready for a new relationship, although our energy was perfect. So it was her fault in reality. She thought it was my fault, but this was her fault basically, that the relationship didn't work because she wasn't able to open up to me, although our energy was perfect. I'm saying this because I think that's the standard go-to response for many women nowadays, is that they get burned by previous relationships because they pick the wrong guys, and then they have an inability to trust the new guy. I actually had this with my current ex-girlfriend is also in the beginning, and then you as a guy, you kind of have to stick it out with the hope that she will eventually open up. But in the meantime, she could just fuck other guys. And this is what happened, I think, when I was 31 years old, that she was burned. And the thing is, like, if as a guy, if you're not stupid, you can sense the same things that, in a way that you can sense that if she's more interested, less interested during the relationship, and yeah, whatever. And I would say that women are very bad in picking men. Most women are very bad in picking men. They have very low intuition. Although they think of themselves, they have high intuition because they've been told that they have, but they don't. And a lot of things, women make wrong decisions in men, in money, in a lot of things in life. And then when they make the decision twice, they're basically, that's a very interesting thing to look at this. They lost trust in their own so-called intuition. And then when they meet a man that's really good, they don't open up, or they don't trust the guy because they don't trust their own intuition. And that's fascinating to watch. It's trist, it's sad, but that's just the reality of things. And I think that I said this I said this in a video to friends once. I think the most, so if you're a very smart man and you're looking for a woman, actually the thing that you are looking for the most in a woman, the character trait that is the most desirable, would be extremely good high intuition. The moment she doesn't have that, you can kick her to the curb because she's going to get manipulated in this world. And I think that's something I should discuss a lot more. I think I should make a video about, women and intuition and how to pick women that have very high intuition. And that's literally the reason why some of the relationships that I had didn't work very well, because the women didn't really have this extremely good high intuition. Because if they had that, it would have sticked it out, they would have stayed and well, I actually left most of them, but they would have handled it differently, and then the relationship would have continued. For example, also, I'm very open, and I don't have taboos. With me, it's possible to talk about anything. But I noticed that, for example, when I was 31 years old, with the girl, she didn't talk about things that bothered her. She didn't talk about, saying, okay, I wish, for example, sex was like this. I wish intimacy was like this. I wish this was like this, we never talked about it. But it's super interesting, like, to see how society is changing and how incapable we as human beings are to figure out what makes us really happy. Isn't that bizarre? Like, we have all this technology, all this knowledge, but we're incapable to figure out what makes us happy. And not only that, but we do often the exact contrary of what makes us happy. It's really bizarre. And then you just go for the, for the least complicated compromise. How do I make as much money as I can? How do I try to get a 10 out of 10? But you're not looking at, what makes you really happy. Because it's basically just a compromise. It's saying basically, my life is shit, life is shit, but at least I have something to aspire to, no matter, what value it has for me. It doesn't even need a value. I think you could even say, if Tate were to advertise something completely different and be like, the goal of your life is to have a huge biceps, and that's all you need. Everything, forget about it. And he would sell that as convincing as he's selling everything else. Men would be like, wow. And you would see tons of 15-year-olds with huge biceps because that's what Tate says. Isn't it bizarre? Isn't it bizarre how easily manipulated people are into creating false desires and narratives instead of looking at their own, inner space? It's really bizarre. And because of boredom and because of stories, we try. It's basically also, what it also is? It's the nerd's way out. It's the easiest nerd's way out. It's, he makes it sound like super hard, but it's not. It's just an easy nerd's way out of a situation that he's uncomfortable in himself, and he's trying to figure out how to make himself feel more comfortable. I think, the hard way out is literally coming into silence, aware of what's going on around you, aware of what's going on in your psychoenergetic field, not being victim to it, and growing from there spiritually on a soul level. And because that fills you from the inside. It literally does fill you from the soul level and not from the superficial level. It's also an interesting thing, like this desire and this need to be wanted by the opposite sex. It's super interesting. And men prefer to have the illusion of being wanted by being successful or having money, rather than having nothing at all. And I think in that might be the clue for further growth, is instead of needing to be wanted, needing to be desired by, the most beautiful women in the world for the money that you have, the question is really, what happens if you don't get it? Let me remove a toxic metaframer. Okay, I love removing toxic metaframers. Because, let's talk about toxic metaframing and desire for harmony. If you do things that are harmonious for you, then you're practicing self-love. If you're doing things that are disharmonious for you, you're practicing self-hatred. And toxic metaframers are trying to hurt you on a psychoenergetic field level. And if you accept them in any shape or form, then you're actually practicing self-hatred. So the highest form of self-love is cutting from toxic metaframers completely. And that's the same thing in comments, in chats, in any kind of interaction between real life or online. If you accept a toxic metaframer, you're actually practicing self-hatred. So you never can come into self-love. And it is basically, this person is treating me badly, but I accept them. This person is treating me badly, but I give them attention. This person is treating me badly, but I feel like there's something that I need to resolve with them. Any kind of attention, basically, the moment you allow a toxic framer in your living room, metaphorically or real, you are practicing self-hatred. The moment you kick them out to be in your own space, you're practicing self-love. Why does it feel then uncomfortable? I tell you why. The fear of being alone outside of a group. This is a very, very interesting phenomenon. Given that most people are toxic metaframers nowadays, you feel like you're being constantly kicked out of a group. So your survival instinct on a very deep unconscious level is kicking in, because you feel like if everybody's toxic, let's say you come into a party and the party is important for you because you feel like you're going to network there for jobs or whatever, and everybody's bad to you, like toxic metaframe. I have a fantastic example from this. I saw a video yesterday about Lady Gaga, and Lady Gaga was with her first producer, and the producer, they obviously had a lot of songs already written together, whatever, and he was like, he wants sex with her. And she said no. And he then continued stressing on it. She said, that he continued stressing on it. And if she didn't have sex with him, he would delete all of the audio files, basically, all of the production. And so she finally had sex with him, and she regrets it until this day. But it was her choice. And he was, of course, abusing his power position, but she was abusing her power position as well, because she could have just walked away. And this is something that I want to very clearly state here. She practiced self-hatred. Lady Gaga in this moment practiced self-hatred. Although she had a desire to become famous and make money with her music, she felt she needed to do this to get her career started. And I think this is a perfect example of where you feel that you need to do something, even if it's self-hatred, in order to get ahead of life ahead in life or be part of some group or get, economic advantage. And I'm saying no. I'm saying practice always self-love. Just walk the fuck away. You don't have to do what is. You can always practice self-love. Nothing is gonna happen to you. And this is something that nothing in the sense like you're still going to be the beingness you are, except you're gonna have a little bit more dignity and a little bit more self-love. And I think a lot of people miss that in life. And to be quite honest, from my perspective, it's actually really stupid what she did. Really fucking stupid. And maybe that's even where her back pain and stuff comes from, because, if you practice self-hatred, it's gonna end up working against your body as well. So, and I think that concludes the live stream for now. Bye-bye.